You might also get a task like this. Create a function to replace parameters in URL. And actually this is a real-world task, because here we have an initial URL like it is generated in all routers for all front-end frameworks. And in this case we have like initial URL /post/ and here :post ID /comment comment ID. Which means these two parameters with colons will be replaced by IDs at some point later. And actually we must write a function replace params in URL where we can throw inside the URL with such structure and our array of replacements. And as you can see, inside every single object we must provide from and to. For example, from post ID means that we must replace :post ID with ID1 and here comment ID with ID3. And of course this function must be generic. It is not only for posts and comments, but any replacements inside URL. And actually before we will start solving, I want to show you one more thing, how you can think about solving problems. For example, you can write something like to-do list, and in this case we are trying to think in steps regarding what we want to implement. For example, what will be the first step here? As you see, we have an array of our replacements, which actually means we have a function with two arguments, and actually we want to loop through every single replacement and apply this replacement to our URL. So actually here we can write go through replacements. And the second point will be maybe replace parts of each replacements. And the last thing will be here return a new string. And this list in this case might sound like an obvious thing, but it can help if you write something like this to implement more complex logic. And actually I directly want to implement here a correct solution, and we can use reduce for this because it suits our code best. But I also want to show you the single problem that you might do. Actually here we want to create our function, replace params in URL, and we are getting here URL and our list of replacements. And actually what we want to return here is reduce for our replacements. So replacements.reduce, and here we have our function with accumulator and each of replacement. And as initial value we have here our URL, because this is what we want to change. Now here inside the function we must return updated string, and for this we can use a plain JavaScript function which is called replace. And actually here you might write it wrong like this. You can think, okay, I have a URL, we can simply write here URL equals URL.replace, and here we are replacing first of all colon plus replacement.from, and we are changing it to replacement.to. This is it. And after this we want to return our URL. And actually this code looks kind of correct, and now I want to move our initial URL and results here to the bottom and write console log result URL. And let's check what we have. I'm reloading the page and we are getting exactly /post/1/comment/3, which actually means this logic with reduce is working correctly. So we are looping through every single replacement. Here we updated our URL and here we return it. And all looks good, but actually you have here a huge problem. As you can see, my accumulator variable is not highlighted, which actually means we are not using here reduce correctly, and we are not using accumulator at all. What we are using this URL from params, and we directly mutate this URL every single time. And actually this is completely wrong. First of all, because we should not mutate our params, and secondly, the most important part, we are using here reduce like a for loop, because actually we simply mutate our variable from outside in the loop and we are not using our accumulator. Actually the correct code here is not URL replace, but simply return accumulator replace. Because as you can see, we provided URL here as an initial value, and we should not use URL here inside. We don't want to change our URL, we want every single time to update our accumulator and return a new accumulator. And as you can see, this code is working exactly the same, but this is completely different. Previously, if you would write code like this is completely wrong on the interview, because you are not using reduce like reduce, but just like for loop. The same goes with map. If you are using map just to loop through things, you are doing it wrong. With map, you need to transform your array and return it back.